Okay, so a good spot to visit the pipelines, close to the road. Stop the coach there. Since this is above ground, this means this area is thaw stable permafrost. So underneath you is frozen soil, frozen year round. But again, it's got something called an active layer, something that will thaw. In the interior, it's anywhere between 2 and 10 feet of thaw every year, but still below that there's permanently frozen soil, okay? Frozen year round. Definition of permafrost, technical definition, is any soil that remains frozen for 2 years or more, but most permafrost has been frozen for thousands of years, and sometimes it's very deep. Okay, so when the pipeline's buried, it's just welded together pipe. They dig a big ditch, they backfill it with a little bit of gravel for drainage, they put the welded pipe down in there, they backfill it with other different grades of gravel. There's a science of gravel you got to understand, but other than that, it's not that complicated. And they put topsoil on it and try and keep it vegetated. A lot more complicated above ground, and they invented this above ground pipeline system for this pipeline. Now, even in non-permafrost areas, this is actually the industry standard now. If the oil industry could have above ground pipelines in most places, they would. Problem is, people don't want. If they can see it, they worry about it. So out of sight is out of mind. So people want. People will fight a pipeline in many places. So, but this is easier to fix. If anything goes wrong with this, you can get to it right away and you can fix it. So above ground pipelines are actually a lot safer. Okay, so what you're seeing right here is, so the actual pipeline pipe is 4 foot in, whatever that is, 4 foot in diameter. It's a 1/2 inch thick pipe. But it's inside of here. What you're seeing there is a weather jacket. Okay, it's galvanized sheet steel. I don't know what gauge, but and then attached to that is 3 3/4 inches of fiberglass insulation. Okay, and what they're trying to do is keep the oil warm, or actually hot. So it supposedly goes into pump station number 1 at something like 145 degrees Fahrenheit. It's coming out of the ground from deep in the ground, and the weight of the overlaying sediments creates heat. So it's hot when it comes up, and it flows well when it's hot. So think of something like, I mean, this might be the wrong metaphor, but just to get the idea, if you heat up molasses, it flows. You cool it down to something what we consider more of a normal temperature, it doesn't flow well anymore. So this crude oil is something like that. So they have to try and maintain heat to have it flow, and that's why it's insulated above ground. And when it's buried in all that gravel, the gravel provides, and the ground provides the insulation. Okay. So that's what you see there. And then over here, it's a fiberglass build out over here, and attached to the bottom of that is something called a shoe. The shoe, on the bottom of the shoe is very early generation Teflon. This is slippery stuff. Okay, that's sitting on top of that crossbar. It is not attached with any fastenings or anything. It's supposed to move. And it moves not forward and backwards, but sideways. Okay. Whenever we get these big views of the pipeline, you'll always know the pipeline kind of moves in the landscape like that, but sometimes it's actually very, very deliberate. It looks like this. You know, it's making these very deliberate bends. Okay, that is because as something made of metal, it expands and contracts a lot with changes in temperature. And so if the pipeline was just straight above ground, the forces of expansion and contraction would either crumple it up or it would pull it apart. Right? Okay, so this is so that every one of those bends, and so the whole pipeline is kind of moving like this. And every time I come here, this shoe is at a different place on that crossbar. So I used to try and take a photo, but I didn't. I wanted to do like a time-lapse photography thing. It didn't work out. But anyway, it moves all the time.
The other reason you come as far as this block here.
That bumper? Yeah. I've seen it all the way over before.
Really?
Yeah. Yep. I've basically seen, over 12 years of guiding, I've seen it almost to that side, and I've seen it up against that bumper before. Yeah, it's well, interior Alaska actually has the biggest annual temperature extremes of any place in North America, actually. Just huge annual changes in temperature. Really cold in the winter, and for our latitude, very hot in the summertime. Okay, so the other reason you need it to be able to move, and this is not an earthquake area, these vertical support members that go into the ground, they are fairly close together, but in places where you have earthquakes, like the Alaska range, these are much farther apart, and during an earthquake, the pipeline will actually move around like that. Actually, in the Alaska range, right over a fault line called the Denali Fault, it's actually on rails on the ground. And in 2002, we had a 7.9 earthquake, which is a very large earthquake, and the pipeline did not break. The pipeline did not rupture. So these design things that they built into it actually are very effective. It worked very well. Okay, so the other thing that people always notice. Okay, so this post and that post. Alaska, we like acronyms. We use acronyms for everything. This is called a VSM, Vertical Support Member. I guess post is not complicated enough. So it's pipe. It's actually the same thickness as the pipeline pipe. Okay, so we got two of them. We got the crossbar attached to them. There's a whole bunch of engineering that I'm not going to go into, but the important thing is that so when they put stuff back down on here and they put gravel absorbs heat, and these absorb heat in the summertime, and they can actually, even though these go between 20 and 60 feet down in the permafrost, they go way down, but they can melt permafrost by picking up heat in the summertime. So they had to come up with a system to mitigate the heat that they pick up, and they came up with this passive refrigeration system. So the radiators. So those are radiators up there. Okay, so this pipe goes way down in the ground, but it is sealed on the bottom, and it's sealed where you see the two pipes coming out of the top. Okay, those pipes that the radiators are on, they go all the way down to the bottom into a liquid reservoir of refrigerant. Okay, in the old days, it was this stuff called anhydrous ammonia, which is something they probably still use in fertilizer, but it's a nasty chemical. Okay, these days they actually use carbon dioxide, but in both cases, its boiling point, the point at which it goes from liquid to vapor, is below the freezing point of water. So if it warms up, and the surrounding territory and this vertical support member warm up enough that they're projecting heat into the ground, and the surrounding area gets up to -2 degrees Celsius, that liquid reservoir is going to boil. It's going to go from liquid to vapor. It's going to expand as a gas, rise up to those pipes, go to the radiators, go to the heat exchangers, and eventually, not right now, not in the middle of summer, because right now the temperature outside is warmer than the temperature inside. But come September, when we start going regularly below freezing, it's gonna start exchanging that heat, and for the majority of the year, it's going to, while it's boiling, it is going to release that heat to the outside. The liquid, or the gas will recondense as liquid, fall back down. And it's a closed loop system that actually keeps the temperature inside of the ground at about -2°C or colder. And you don't need, it's not like the refrigerator at home. You don't need electricity, you don't need a pump, you don't need a compressor. It's a system that once you set it up and seal it, it acts on temperature differentials, and that's it. So it's very elegant, and you get it set up, and it, other than monitoring it, makes sure everything's being sealed. It doesn't cost you anything. Okay? So, and for a pipeline of this size, that's a big deal. That made it a workable solution. Okay. Any questions? I have one other cool thing to show you before we go back to the coach. So you notice that we got these arches. We got a service road right here. Okay, so sometimes you'll see an Alaska pickup going up and down, or maybe some heavy machinery doing some work. Those were created after the pipeline. I think what happened is they had, maybe they'd be going along with a backhoe with a boom arm up or something like that, and they hit the pipeline. So they had a bunch of surplus material left over, and so every time the service road goes under the pipeline, they put these things. These are called headache bars, and they're the same height above the road as the pipeline is, and they even have the elevation written on it, and that's insurance. It's all insurance, so you don't hit the pipeline. So anyway, you'll notice that every time this little road goes under the pipeline, you'll have one on either side. Okay, questions before we go back?
How much oil goes through that a day or?
So a barrel of North Slope crude is about 42 U.S. gallons, and it is at 310,000 barrels a day.
Going through that right now?
Per day, yeah. At the peak of production, it was almost 2 million barrels, but that was way back in 1998. The production has been declining. They could put more through. They could actually produce more per day right now, but the pipeline's very old, so it actually couldn't take the increased pressure. It's like an old man burger. All right.